I pulled into the cracked asphalt parking lot of Greystone Park Psychiatric Hospital just as the sun went down behind the trees. The big stone building stood against the darkening sky, 5 stories of old brick and broken windows across the New Jersey landscape. 6 people stood in a loose circle beside their vehicles, headlamp beams bobbing as they checked equipment. I recognized Michael Davis immediately, his man bun and sleeve tattoos visible even in the dim light. Next to him was Thomas Cooper, putting things in his utility vest pockets. The others were new faces. I grabbed my backpack from the passenger seat and headed over, my boots crunching on scattered gravel. "Jamie, right on time." Michael clapped me on the shoulder with his heavy hand. I nodded to Thomas, who gave me a quick 2-finger salute without looking up from his gear check. "Everyone, this is James Mitchell," said a stocky guy with a tactical vest who I didn't recognize. "He's done a dozen major sites with Thomas and Mike." "Ryan Wilson," he continued, extending his hand. "I organized this little expedition." I shook his hand, noting his firm grip and the expensive-looking headlamp strapped to his forehead. Ryan gestured to the 3 women standing nearby. "That's Olivia Parker and Emma Taylor by the red Jeep, and Natalie Brooks with the camera." Olivia waved. She wore a vintage leather jacket that looked too stylish for crawling through abandoned buildings. Next to her, Emma stood completely still, staring up at Greystone with intense focus. Something about her pale face and intense blue eyes made me look away after a few seconds. Natalie looked up from adjusting her camera and gave a quick smile. "Let's get final checks done," Ryan said. "We've got about 5 hours before we need to clear out." I pulled my gear from my backpack: high-end flashlight, extra batteries, camera, first aid kit, water bottle, and snack bars. I clicked on my radio and confirmed it was working on the group channel. Greystone was shut down in 2008, Ryan told us as we gathered closer. But its history goes back to 1876. At its peak, they crammed almost 5,000 patients into wards built for 2,000. I tested my flashlight, pointing the light across the building's front. Most urban explorers came for the architecture, the grand staircases, the tile work, the massive windows. But places like this had creepier stuff too. "Lots of patient mistreatment happened here," Ryan continued. "Experimental treatments, isolation punishments, deaths that weren't reported properly, the usual horror show of old asylums." "Were there ever riots?" Emma asked suddenly, her voice softer than I expected. "Patient uprisings? Any staff killed by inmates?" I looked over at her. Most first-timers asked about security guards or police response times, not murder. Ryan seemed pleased by the question. "There were incidents, yeah. A nurse was killed in the 70s, and there were patient-on-patient deaths that got covered up." Emma nodded while staring at the building. She had a silver locket around her neck that she kept touching. "Everyone stay with your teams," Ryan said. "Radio's on channel 3. Check in every 30 minutes. We moved toward the building as a group, heading for a service entrance around the side. The door had a broken lock that Ryan easily pushed open. The hinges made a loud noise that seemed to echo. The smell hit me first, dust and mildew and something more chemical beneath it all. Our flashlights showed a reception area frozen in time. Papers littered the floor, yellowed with age. Chairs sat overturned or pushed against walls. 3 wheelchairs were positioned near what had been a nurse's station, as if their occupants had simply stood up and walked away. "Temperature drop," Thomas said, pulling his jacket tighter. He wasn't wrong. It felt 10 degrees colder inside than out. "We'll split into 3 teams," Ryan said, his voice echoing off the peeling walls. "Cover more ground that way. Michael, Thomas, and Natalie take the west wing. I'll check out the administration section and patient records. James, you take Emma and Olivia to the east wing." I wasn't thrilled about babysitting 2 newcomers, but at least Olivia seemed capable. Emma worried me. She hadn't stopped staring at different parts of the building since we entered, as if tracking something moving in the shadows. "Main floor first, then we work our way up," Ryan added. "Nobody goes to the basement levels alone. We meet back here at midnight." The group broke apart, flashlight beams dancing across the walls as we headed in different directions. I led Emma and Olivia down the main corridor toward the east wing, our footsteps stirring up small clouds of dust. Water damage had left dark stains spreading across the ceiling. "You two explored abandoned places before?" I asked. "A few factories and an old hotel," Olivia said, her camera clicking as she photographed a row of rusted wall hooks. "Emma and I went to Penhurst last year. She's got a thing for old hospitals." Emma walked slightly behind us, running her fingers along the wall. "The paint is different here," she said. "They changed it after the incident in '83. I shot a look at Olivia, who just shrugged. I had no idea what incident Emma meant, and I didn't ask. The corridor opened into what had been a day room. Very old television brackets hung from the ceiling. Plastic chairs were scattered around, some broken. A checkerboard pattern was painted on one table, the squares barely visible anymore. As we crossed toward a set of double doors, I saw something move in my flashlight beam, just at the edge of the light, down a side hallway. I stopped and pointed the light directly down the corridor. Nothing but peeling paint and shadows. "What?" Olivia asked. "Thought I saw something move." I kept my light trained on the empty hallway. "Probably a raccoon," Olivia said. "We found a family of them at the Danvers hospital." I looked a bit longer, then nodded. Old buildings made noises. Shadows could trick you. And I knew from way back that our eyes sometimes see things moving in the dark when nothing's there. Just something left over from when humans had to watch out for danger. "Let's check out the patient rooms," I said, pushing through the double doors. Emma finally looked at me instead of the building, her blue eyes reflecting my flashlight beam. "They're waiting for us," she said quietly. I pretended not to hear her and kept walking, focusing on the solid feel of the floor beneath my boots instead of the chill that had settled at the base of my neck. I took Emma and Olivia deeper into the east wing, our flashlights pointing across empty doorways. For 2 hours, we'd gone through the first and second floors, taking pictures of crumbling patient rooms. The rooms all looked the same after a while, each with peeling paint, rusted bed frames, and smashed floor tiles. "Not much to see down here," I said, panning my light across another empty room. "Most urban explorers come for the architecture, but the real interesting stuff is usually on the upper floors. That's where they kept the treatment rooms." "Treatment is a generous word for what they did to people in these places," Olivia said, snapping photos of a broken mirror. Emma hadn't said much since we'd started. She walked a few paces behind us, running her hand along the wall like she was reading Braille. Every few minutes she'd stop and stare into empty corners or touch random objects. A doorknob, a light switch, the edge of a window frame. We turned down a long corridor lined with more patient rooms. My light showed something on the wall ahead, bright red markings that stood out against the green paint. "Looks like we've got some graffiti," I said, walking closer. The red letters stretched across the wall in jagged, uneven script. "Blood will spill." "Charming," Olivia said, raising her camera. "Teen goths living their best life." We continued down the hallway and found more messages painted in the same red color. "They make us hurt them," sprawled across a door, the letters dripping down like they'd been painted in a hurry. "At least they're committed to the horror movie aesthetic," Olivia said with a small laugh, but her voice had an edge to it now. Emma had fallen completely silent. When I looked back, she was standing in front of the "Blood will spill" message, her flashlight off, touching the letters with her fingertips. Her eyes had gone wide, reflecting the red paint in my light beam. "Emma?" I called. She didn't respond, just kept tracing the letters with her fingers while her lips moved rapidly. I walked back to her. Emma, you okay? She turned to me slowly, her hand still on the wall. What? You were saying something. Emma shook her head. No, I wasn't. You were moving your lips. I wasn't saying anything. She wiped her fingers on her black jeans, leaving faint red smudges. Don't mind her, Olivia said, rejoining us. She gets weird vibes in places like this. You should have seen her at Penhurst. She spent 20 minutes talking to an empty corner in one of the wards. I did not, Emma said, but without much conviction. Yeah? Who were you arguing with in that empty bathroom then? Olivia bumped Emma's shoulder playfully. Come on, let's check upstairs. I want to see if there's still medical equipment. We found the stairwell at the end of the hall and climbed to the 3rd floor. The stairs creaked under our weight, and chunks of plaster had fallen from the ceiling to litter the steps. I went first, testing each stair before letting the women follow. The 3rd floor was in worse condition than the lower levels. Whole sections of ceiling had collapsed, and we had to navigate around piles of fallen insulation and broken light fixtures. The air felt heavier up here, thick with dust that caught in our throats. Watch your step, I warned. Floors compromised in some spots. We picked our way carefully down the main corridor. Most of the rooms were in similar states of decay, stripped of anything valuable with only rusted bed frames and broken furniture left behind. But near the end of the hall, we came across a room unlike the others. Hold up, I said, pointing my light through an open doorway. This looks different. The room was larger than the patient quarters, with tiled walls and a drain in the center of the concrete floor. Unlike the other spaces, this one still contained intact equipment. A gurney with leather restraints, a metal cabinet with glass doors, and what looked like electrical equipment on a rolling cart. Treatment room, I said, stepping inside carefully. Probably for electroshock therapy. Olivia whistled low. Now, this is what I came for. She raised her camera and started taking photos. Emma hesitated at the doorway, one hand gripping the frame. You coming in? I asked her. She nodded and took a small step into the room, her eyes fixed on the electroshock equipment. I looked around the room more closely. The cabinet had glass bottles with faded labels, syringes without needles, and what looked like mouth guards. The electroshock machine was surprisingly intact. A metal box with dials and switches, connected to a headpiece with wires. Emma slowly went to the cart and picked up the rusted headpiece. Her hands were steady as she turned it over, looking at every part of it. Her expression changed as she held it. Her eyes got a faraway look while her fingers moved along the metal contacts. You wouldn't believe how many patients they ran through these rooms, I said, trying to break the uncomfortable silence. At peak capacity, Greystone had nearly 5,000 patients crammed in here. Emma didn't seem to hear me. She raised the headpiece higher, as if considering putting it on. Emma, put that down, Olivia said sharply. It's gross, and probably covered in tetanus. Emma didn't move for a moment, then slowly lowered the device back onto the cart. I noticed her hands were shaking now as she stepped away from the equipment. You okay? I asked. Fine, she said quietly. Just thinking about the people who were in this room. I checked my watch. We should radio the others. It's been over 30 minutes since our last check-in. I pulled my radio from my belt clip and pressed the talk button. James here with Olivia and Emma in the East Wing, 3rd floor. All clear. Anyone copy? The radio spat a burst of static, then nothing. I tried again. Ryan? Michael? Thomas? Anyone reading me? This time we got a broken response, a voice coming through the static. West Wing. Thought we saw. Can't find. That's Michael, I said, trying once more. Michael, you're breaking up. Say again. More static then. Thomas went. Heard something, not answering his... The transmission cut out completely. I checked the battery indicator on my radio, still full. Signal shouldn't be this bad, I said. These buildings can interfere, but we're not that deep inside. Maybe something's wrong with their radio, Olivia suggested. Try Ryan, Emma said suddenly. I nodded and switched channels. Ryan, do you copy? We're having trouble reaching Michael. Nothing but static. Try again, Emma insisted, her voice tense. Before I could, a sound cut through the quiet of the hospital. A loud metallic bang from somewhere in the building. We all froze, listening. It came again, a clear ringing sound like metal striking metal. What the hell is that? I whispered. The sound repeated, rhythmic now. Bang, bang, bang. Could be Thomas or Ryan looking for us, Olivia suggested. They would use the radio first, I said. Maybe it's kids, Olivia said. Other explorers or teenagers messing around. Nobody else would be in here at night, I said. Ryan said he scouted this place for weeks. He would have mentioned if others were using it. The banging continued, echoing through the building. It was impossible to pinpoint the source. It could be coming from any floor, any wing. We should go back to the entrance, Emma said, her voice suddenly urgent. Right now. We need to leave. Olivia was already heading toward the doorway. No way. We came here to explore, right? That's exactly the kind of thing we should check out. It could be dangerous, Emma said. Someone could be hurt. Or it could be nothing, Olivia countered. Come on. Where's your sense of adventure? I stood between them, considering our options. The banging continued, steady and insistent. If it's nothing, we wasted a few minutes, Olivia continued. If it's something, maybe the others need help. She's right, I said reluctantly. We should at least try to figure out where it's coming from. Emma gripped her silver locket, her knuckles white. You don't understand what's happening here. Then explain it, I said. She shook her head, looking at the floor. I'm going, Olivia said, already heading into the corridor. You two can catch up or go back to the entrance. I looked at Emma, who was still clutching her locket. We stick together, I told her firmly. Safety in numbers, right? She looked at me for a moment, then nodded once. Let's go, I said, following Olivia into the hallway with Emma trailing behind us, her reluctance visible in every step. The banging led us deeper into the hospital's east wing, growing louder as we made our way toward whatever, or whoever, was creating it. The banging stopped abruptly, leaving Greystone in a worrying quiet. Emma, Olivia, and I stood frozen in the hallway, trying to hear any more of the metal sounds that had led us deeper into the east wing. A sharp crack broke the quiet, loud and explosive, the sound bouncing through the building. It sounded just like a gunshot coming from the west wing. What the hell was that? Olivia whispered, her flashlight beam wavering as she turned toward the sound. Emma grabbed my arm, her cold fingers digging in. We need to leave, now. Her voice had an urgency I hadn't heard before. That sounded like a gunshot, I said, my mind racing through possibilities. Ryan said nobody else should be here. Exactly why we need to check it out, Olivia said, already turning back toward the main corridor. What if someone's hurt? Emma shook her head violently. No. We go back to the entrance. Call the police. With what? My phone has no service in here, Olivia countered. And if that was a gunshot, Thomas or Michael or Ryan could be in trouble. I weighed our options quickly. If someone was hurt, every minute could matter. But Emma's fear seemed real, and running toward a potential shooter wasn't exactly smart. What if it wasn't a gun? I suggested. Old buildings like this have pipes that can burst, metal fixtures that fall. Could be anything. All the more reason to check, Olivia insisted. Emma's grip tightened on my arm. Please, she whispered. I have a bad feeling. I looked between them, making my decision. We'll check, but carefully. We stay together, and at the first sign of real danger, we're out. Agreed? Olivia nodded immediately. Emma hesitated, her face pale in the flashlight beam. "Emma, we can't just leave the others if they're in trouble," I said softly. She finally released my arm and nodded once, though her whole body seemed to resist the decision. We went back through the 3rd floor, heading to the main stairs. Every creak and groan of the building made us stop and listen. The air felt different now, heavier, colder, and I kept looking over my shoulder. "The West Wing is on the other side of the building," I said as we reached the stairwell. "We'll need to go through the main lobby again." The stairs were dangerous in the dark, covered in debris and water damage. We went down slowly, our flashlights showing missing steps and rusted handrails pulled away from the wall. Emma stayed close behind me, while Olivia took the rear. The 2nd floor landing was mostly intact, but when we reached the 1st floor, we found part of the ceiling had collapsed, blocking half the stairwell. We climbed over broken plaster and exposed wiring, careful not to move the unstable pile. "This wasn't like this before," I said, frowning at the debris. "We came up these same stairs to the East Wing. Maybe we took a different stairwell?" Olivia suggested. I shook my head. "No, this is the main one. I remember that broken window." I pointed to a star-shaped crack in the landing window. Emma said nothing, but her breathing had become shallow and rapid. We pushed through to the main corridor and turned toward the West Wing. The distance seemed greater than I remembered, the hallways longer and more twisted. Water damage had buckled the floor in places, forcing us to hug the walls. "Listen," Olivia said suddenly, stopping in her tracks. We froze, hearing distant footsteps, someone running, getting closer. I instinctively pulled Emma behind me as someone appeared at the end of the corridor. It was Ryan, running toward us. His vest wasn't zipped up properly, and he looked really scared. He was pale, with a blank stare. He almost ran into us before he stopped quickly. "Ryan, what happened?" I asked, my flashlight illuminating the sweat on his forehead. "Thomas," he gasped, bending forward to catch his breath. "Someone shot Thomas." "What? Who?" Olivia demanded, moving closer. Ryan shook his head. "I don't know. We were checking the administration offices when we heard someone moving around in one of the rooms." He took a deep breath, steadying himself. Thomas went to look. I heard him say something, then the shot. When I got there, he was on the ground, bleeding from his chest. "Where is he now?" I asked, already reaching for my first aid kit. "I don't know," Ryan admitted, his voice cracking. "I went for help, but when I came back with Michael, Thomas was gone. Just a blood trail leading down the hall, then nothing." Emma made a small sound behind me, something between a whimper and a word I couldn't make out. "Where's Michael now?" I asked. "Still looking for Thomas." We split up to cover more ground. I pulled out my radio. "We need to get everyone together. This isn't safe." I pressed the talk button. "Michael, do you copy? Thomas? Anyone?" The radio crackled with static. Then Michael's voice came on, sounding scared and out of breath. "James? That you?" "Yeah, we're with Ryan. Where are you?" "North corridor, 2nd floor of the West Wing. Something's wrong." His voice faded in and out. "Natalie was right behind me, then she's gone, man. One minute she was there, the next." "Stay where you are," I said firmly. "We're coming to you." "I've been looking everywhere," Michael continued, his voice breaking. "She wouldn't just wander off, not after what happened to Thomas." "Wait there," I repeated. "Don't move." The radio crackled with static, then silence. Ryan looked even more shaken. "We need to find them. All of them." "I agree, but we stick together from now on," I insisted. Ryan shook his head. "We'll cover more ground if we split up. James, you and I can check the basement level. There's a morgue down there where someone could be hiding. Olivia and Emma can search this floor and the 2nd. "I don't think splitting up is a good idea," I argued. We don't have time to argue, Ryan said. Every minute counts if Thomas is bleeding out somewhere. Emma turned to me, her eyes pleading. Don't leave me. I hesitated, torn between the urgent need to find our missing friends and my instinct to keep everyone together. I'll stay with Emma, Olivia offered. We'll be careful, just checking rooms on this floor. You guys can handle the basement, then meet us back here in 20 minutes. I looked at Emma, who was clearly terrified at the thought of separating. Are you okay with that? 20 minutes, no longer. She nodded reluctantly. Don't go too far, she said, her voice barely audible. 20 minutes, I repeated, checking my watch. 10:48 now. We meet at 11:08 right here. Ryan was already moving toward the stairwell that led to the basement. I gave Emma's shoulder a reassuring squeeze before following him. The basement stairs were narrow and steep, with most of the railing missing. Our flashlights barely lit up the thick darkness as we went down. The air got noticeably colder, damp with a sharp chemical smell that burned the back of my throat. What exactly are we looking for down here? I asked Ryan. The morgue has a separate exit, he explained. It's how they removed bodies without disturbing patients. If someone's in the building who shouldn't be, they might use it to get in and out. The basement corridor was lined with pipes overhead, many broken and dripping foul-smelling water. Thick mold covered the walls in black and green patches. Our flashlights showed a series of heavy doors, most hanging open to show storage rooms filled with broken furniture and medical waste. Ryan led the way to a set of double doors at the end of the hall. A faded sign read, "Morgue, authorized personnel only." The doors creaked open to show a large room with multiple autopsy tables arranged in rows. The stainless steel was rusted but still recognizable, complete with drainage channels and straps for securing bodies. Along one wall stood a bank of storage drawers, the kind used to house the dead before burial. This place gives me the creeps, I muttered, scanning the room with my light. Check those drawers, Ryan instructed, moving toward a door at the far end of the room. I want to see if that exit is secure. I walked up to the wall of storage compartments and saw several were partly open. I pulled one out more, wincing at the loud metallic screech that carried through the morgue. The drawer was empty except for a stained sheet. I checked several more, finding nothing but rust and decay. When I reached the last drawer, I paused. It was closed completely, unlike the others. I took a breath and pulled it open. Empty. Anything? Ryan called from across the room. Nothing, I replied, relieved. What about the exit? Sealed shut. Looks like it hasn't been opened in years. We searched the rest of the morgue, finding nothing but old equipment and more empty drawers. No sign of Thomas, Natalie, or anyone else who might have fired a gun. We should head back up, I said, checking my watch. We had been down there for 15 minutes already. Ryan nodded, and we made our way back through the basement corridor and up the stairs to the main floor. The hospital seemed different somehow, the shadows deeper, the air colder. A strange draft blew through the hallway, though I couldn't tell where it was coming from since all the windows we had passed were sealed or boarded up. When we reached our meeting point, Olivia was waiting alone, her flashlight beam moving nervously along the walls. "Where's Emma?" I asked immediately, scanning the area behind her. Olivia looked distraught. She heard something, whispers coming from a room down there. She pointed down a side corridor. She went to check while I was looking in the opposite direction. When I turned around, she was gone. "You let her go alone?" Ryan demanded. "I didn't let her do anything," Olivia said defensively. "She just wandered off. I called for her, looked in every room down that hall, but couldn't find her." A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the building's dropping temperature. "How long ago?" "Maybe 5 minutes. I came right back here to wait for you guys." I pulled out my radio again. "Emma, do you copy?" Nothing but static. "Emma, if you can hear me, please respond." Still nothing. "Michael was our best tracker," Ryan said, grabbing his own radio. "Michael, come in. We need your help. It's Ryan." We waited, the silence broken only by the crackle of static from the radio. No response came. Ryan tried again, his voice rising with frustration. "Michael! Damn it, answer me!" The radio produced a burst of static that made us all jump, then silence. "Something's wrong with these radios," Ryan muttered, shaking his. "They were working fine earlier." "Or something's blocking the signal," I suggested, not liking either possibility. Another cold draft swept through the hallway, stronger this time, carrying with it the faint sound of whispers too distant to make out. The lights from our flashlights seemed to dim slightly, struggling against the pressing darkness of Greystone. "We need to find the others and get out of here," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. "All of them." Ryan nodded, his eyes constantly moving between the shadowy corridors that branched off from our position. He raised the radio once more, pressing the talk button with deliberate force. "Michael, it's Ryan. If you can hear me, respond." Only static answered back. The radio static died in my hand, leaving us in a silence that felt wrong in every way. Olivia looked around the darkened corridors with her flashlight. My watch showed 11:25 p.m. In the 20 minutes since we'd reunited in this spot, the temperature had dropped enough that I could see my breath forming small clouds in the beam of my light. "This is pointless," I said, clipping the useless radio back to my belt. "We need to regroup. The lobby might give us better signal, or at least a central point to work from." Ryan nodded reluctantly. "Fine." But we stay together this time. We walked through the hospital's winding hallways, getting lost a bunch of times as we tried to find our way back to the entrance. The building felt bigger than when we came in, with hallways that looked longer than before, and new corners showing up where I was sure there weren't any earlier. "This doesn't make sense," Olivia whispered after our third attempt down what should have been a direct path to the lobby. "I swear we just passed that same broken wheelchair twice." Ryan said nothing, his jaw set in a hard line as he led us around another corner and finally into the big main entrance. The moonlight came through the cracked windows, giving the space an eerie blue glow that barely helped us see. We gathered in the center of the lobby, our flashlights creating a pool of light in the darkness. My throat felt dry and a dull headache had started behind my eyes. 3 hours of searching the huge hospital had given us nothing but more questions and fewer people. "Let's go through what we know," I said, trying to organize my thoughts. "Thomas is missing, possibly injured. Natalie vanished while with Michael. Emma disappeared when a sound from the stairwell cut me off, shuffling footsteps dragging across tile. We all pointed our lights toward the noise, showing someone coming up from the dark. Michael stumbled into the light. His right sleeve was torn, and he had deep cuts running from his elbow to his wrist. Blood had soaked the fabric around the wound, though the bleeding seemed to have slowed. "Michael!" I rushed forward to help him, but he waved me off, leaning against a reception counter to catch his breath. "What happened to you?" Ryan demanded, moving closer to examine the injury. Michael winced as Ryan's light showed the gashes. "Something grabbed me in one of the bathrooms on the second floor. I went in looking for Natalie and..." He shook his head. "I didn't see it. Just felt something grab my arm and pull. I yanked free and ran. I unzipped my pack and pulled out my first aid kit. Those cuts need cleaning." "Have you seen the others?" Olivia asked while I worked on Michael's arm. He shook his head. "I've been looking everywhere for Natalie. Thomas too, after what Ryan said about him being shot." Michael hissed as I applied antiseptic to the wound. "This place is huge. I got completely turned around after whatever happened in that bathroom." The cuts were unusual. 4 parallel lines too evenly spaced to be from catching his arm on exposed metal or broken glass. They looked more like claw marks, though I kept that observation to myself. I wrapped gauze around his forearm, securing it with medical tape. "We should leave," Ryan said abruptly. "Call the police from outside." "No way." Michael pushed himself upright. "I'm not leaving without Natalie." "Look at your arm, man." Ryan gestured at the fresh bandage. "There's someone or something in here that's already shot Thomas and attacked you. We're not equipped for this." "All the more reason not to leave them behind," Michael argued. I finished packing up my first aid supplies. "Michael's right. We can't just abandon them." Ryan ran a hand through his hair, clearly frustrated. "Fine. But we stay together this time. No exceptions, no splitting up for any reason." I nodded. West Wing next. That's where Michael lost Natalie and where Thomas was shot. We stuck together this time, keeping within arm's reach of each other as we headed back into the hospital. The West Wing entrance had double doors hanging off their broken hinges. Past them, the hallway was dark and felt colder than the lobby. We checked each room carefully, working our way down the first-floor hallway. Empty patient rooms, a nurse's station with nothing useful left, storage closets with broken equipment, nothing that helped us find our missing friends. "Second floor next," I said, heading toward the stairwell at the end of the hall. The upper level was in worse condition, with sections of ceiling collapsed onto the floor and standing water in some areas. We picked our way carefully through the debris, checking each room. "There," Michael said suddenly, pointing ahead. "That's where I lost Natalie." He led us to a junction where the hallway split in 3 directions. The left branch led to what looked like an administrative section, the right to more patient rooms, and straight ahead to a large common area. "We were checking rooms down the right corridor," Michael explained. "I went into one room while she checked the next. When I came out, she was gone." "Which bathroom were you attacked in?" I asked. Michael pointed down the administrative corridor. "Second door on the left. I was looking for Natalie there when it happened." We approached the bathroom cautiously. The door hung open, revealing cracked tile walls and broken fixtures. I looked around with my flashlight, finding nothing unusual except a smear of blood on the sink. Likely Michael's from his injury. "Let's keep moving," Ryan said, clearly uncomfortable with lingering. As we continued down the hallway, I spotted a familiar shape on the floor ahead. Ryan's backpack, its contents scattered across the tile. "What the hell?" Ryan hurried forward, crouching to examine the pack. "I never took this off. It was on my back the whole time." "Are you sure it's yours?" Olivia asked. Ryan turned the pack over, showing us his initials written on the bottom in permanent marker. "Positive." I looked around, worried by what this meant. "How did it get here?" Ryan didn't answer, instead picking up the scattered items. Energy bars, a water bottle, spare batteries, his camera. He zipped everything back into the pack and put it on, looking troubled. We continued down the hallway, checking doors as we went. Most opened to empty offices with overturned desks and broken chairs. About halfway down, I noticed a door marked Chief Physician that stood slightly ajar. I pushed it open. The office was larger than the others, with built-in bookshelves along one wall and a heavy wooden desk in the center. Behind the desk, something caught the beam of my flashlight. Wet, shiny red letters scrawled across the wall. "Emma knows." The words were written in what looked like fresh blood, still wet enough that a thin red line had run down from the bottom of the S. "What the hell is that supposed to mean?" Ryan asked, moving beside me to stare at the message. I turned to Olivia, who had gone completely still in the doorway. "Olivia?" She didn't respond, her eyes fixed on the red letters. "Olivia," I repeated, louder this time. "Do you know what this means?" She finally looked at me, her face blank with shock. I'm not sure." Ryan turned to her angrily. "This is bullshit. You know something you're not telling us." He pointed at the wall. "First Emma disappears. Now this? What does she know?" Olivia backed up a step. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" Ryan demanded. Because right now, 4 people are missing. Thomas is shot, and something attacked Michael. If you know anything that could help, you need to tell us now." "We've been here before," Olivia said quietly. "What?" I asked. "Emma and I. We've been to Greystone before." She leaned against the door frame, suddenly looking exhausted. "About 8 months ago, just the 2 of us." "You failed to mention that earlier," Ryan said, his voice rising, "when I specifically asked if anyone had been here before." "It wasn't relevant then," Olivia replied defensively. "It's relevant now," I interjected, trying to keep my voice calm. "What happened when you were here?" Olivia crossed her arms tightly across her chest. "The exploration was mostly normal. We checked out the main buildings, took some photos. But when we found a basement access, Emma insisted on going down alone, said she felt drawn to something." "And you let her?" Michael asked incredulously. "She can be very determined," Olivia said. "I waited at the top of the stairs. She was only gone about 15 minutes, but when she came back up, she was different." "Different how?" I pressed. "Distant, detached. She kept touching that silver locket and saying she could hear them talking to her." Olivia shuddered slightly at the memory. "She said the patients were still here, trapped in the building, that they wanted her to help them." "Help them how?" Ryan asked. "She wouldn't say. The rest of the day, she kept stopping to listen to things I couldn't hear. She'd stand in empty rooms having whispered conversations with no one." Olivia looked directly at me. "It scared me, but she went back to normal after we left. I thought it was just the place getting to her. You know how these explorations can mess with your head when you're already on edge." I did know. I'd experienced it myself in other abandoned buildings. The feeling of being watched, imagining footsteps or voices. But this felt different, more real. "Why come back?" Michael asked. "If it affected her that badly the first time?" "Because she wanted to," Olivia replied simply. "She said she needed to. When Ryan posted about this trip online, she insisted we join." Ryan ran a hand down his face. "Great. So Emma's having some kind of psychotic break and now everyone's disappearing." He gestured at the bloody message. "And apparently, she knows something about it all." "We don't know that's what it means," I said, though I couldn't think of an alternative interpretation. "We need to find her," Olivia insisted. "She might be in danger too." Michael had been quiet, staring down the hallway beyond the office. Now he suddenly straightened, pointing into the darkness. "There, I saw someone." I squinted in the direction he pointed. "Where?" "Down that corridor. It was Natalie, I'm sure of it." His voice was tight with urgency. "Natalie," he called out, his voice echoing back at us. "You sure?" I asked, not seeing anything in the darkness beyond our light beams. "Positive." Before anyone could stop him, Michael bolted down the hallway, his flashlight bobbing as he ran. "Natalie, wait!" "Michael, stop!" I shouted, running after him with Ryan and Olivia close behind. He reached a corner and disappeared around it. We followed seconds later, turning into a narrow hallway with small observation rooms. Our lights moved across empty doorways and broken windows, but Michael was nowhere to be seen. "Michael?" I called, listening for a response. Nothing. "He was just here," Olivia said, her voice rising with panic. "He couldn't have gone far." We moved down the corridor, checking each room as we passed. All empty. At the end, the hallway split into another junction. "Which way?" Ryan asked, breathing hard from the sprint. Before anyone could answer, my radio crackled to life in a burst of static that made us all jump. Through the white noise, a woman's voice came through clearly, just above a whisper. "Find me." Then silence. I stared at the radio in my hand. My stomach felt cold. The voice hadn't belonged to Emma or Natalie. It sounded older, with a hollow quality that sounded like it came from somewhere far away. "Did you hear that?" I asked, looking up at Ryan and Olivia. They nodded, their faces reflecting the same unease I felt. "Who was that?" Olivia whispered. I had no answer. The radio had gone completely dead. Not even static came through now. I clipped it back to my belt. The only response was the distant drip of water from somewhere in the ceiling and the sound of our own breathing, getting faster in the dark of Greystone. Ryan broke the silence first, shouting Michael's name again, his call echoing through the empty hallways, but yielding no response. I clicked my radio repeatedly, trying to make contact, but the device remained dead in my hand. "We need to find him now," Olivia said, her flashlight beam darting nervously between the 3 possible paths before us. We chose the leftmost corridor, walking quickly and calling Michael's name every few minutes. The hallway twisted and turned, branching in ways that made no sense for a hospital layout. I tried making mental notes of our path, left at the broken wheelchair, straight past the nurse's station, right at the medication cart. But when we doubled back after finding nothing, the landmarks had changed position. The wheelchair was gone, replaced by an overturned gurney that hadn't been there before. "This is wrong," I said, stopping to check my bearings. "We just came this way, and that gurney wasn't here." Ryan shrugged it off. "You're getting confused in the dark. Easy to mix up all these corridors." But I wasn't confused. I'd been exploring abandoned buildings for years and had a good sense of direction. This was different. The hospital itself seemed to be rearranging around us. We tried another direction, then another. With each new corridor, my nervousness grew. Time dragged on as we searched, our voices growing hoarse from calling out. My watch showed we'd been looking for almost an hour when we turned a corner and found ourselves facing a set of double doors unlike any we'd passed before. The wood was carved with religious symbols, crosses and angels worn down over the years. A small brass plaque beside the frame read, "Chapel." "I didn't know there was a chapel here," Olivia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "All these old institutions had them," Ryan replied. "Religion was part of the treatment back then." I pushed open one of the heavy doors, wincing at the loud creak that bounced through the space beyond. Our flashlights revealed rows of broken pews facing a simple altar at the front of the room. Moonlight filtered through a stained glass window above the altar, casting colored shadows across the stone floor. We moved forward cautiously, our footsteps unnaturally loud on the bare floor. As we approached the altar, something caught the edge of my light beam. A small, black object placed squarely in the center of the stone table. "That's a camera," Olivia said, moving closer. "It looks like Emma's." She was right. The small digital camera sitting on the altar was identical to the one I'd seen Emma using earlier. Ryan reached the altar first and picked it up. "It's still on," he said, turning it over in his hands. The screen glowed faintly in the darkness. "Let me see," I said, taking it from him. I clicked the review button, and the screen displayed the last photo taken, a hospital bed with rumpled sheets, as if someone had just gotten up from it. I hit the back button, showing another similar picture. Then another. I went through dozens of photos, all showing the same thing. Hospital beds with messed up sheets, some with dents in the pillows shaped like heads, others with what looked like restraints hanging from the sides. "These are fresh," I said, checking the timestamp. "Taken tonight." "That's impossible," Ryan said, grabbing the camera back and flipping through the images himself. "This place has been abandoned for years. There are no beds with sheets anywhere in this building." "Maybe they're from another location," Olivia suggested, though her voice lacked conviction. Ryan's face got serious as he scrolled through more photos. "No. Look at the walls, the window shapes. This is Greystone, but it's not the Greystone we're in." He pointed to one image showing a bed next to a window with a unique arch. I passed that same window 2 hours ago. It was empty. No bed, no sheets, nothing. So what are you saying? I asked. Ryan turned to Olivia, looking angry. I'm saying this is bullshit. Emma's playing us. He held up the camera. She set this up somehow. This whole night, Thomas getting shot, people disappearing, it's all part of some sick game she's playing. Olivia shook her head. That's ridiculous. How could she fake someone getting shot? Or make Michael vanish right in front of us? Or put that message in blood on the wall? I don't know how she did it, but this is proof she's behind it. Ryan jabbed a finger at the camera. She planted this here for us to find. Probably has her friends hiding around the building, moving things, making noises. I placed a hand on Ryan's shoulder, trying to calm him. Let's think this through. Even if Emma wanted to prank us, how would she get those photos? Those beds don't exist anymore. Ryan shrugged off my hand. Maybe she found old photos and doctored them. Maybe she's been planning this for months. All I know is your friend is screwing with us, and I'm done playing along. He looked at Olivia. You knew about this, didn't you? That's why you two came back here. No, I had no idea. Save it, Ryan cut her off. You already lied about never being here before. Ryan, this isn't helping, I said. We need to stay together and find the others. You want to stay with these liars? Be my guest. Ryan tucked the camera into his pocket. I'm going to find Michael and Thomas, then I'm getting the hell out of here. He started toward the chapel doors. I moved to block his path. We agreed to stick together. It's not safe to go alone. Yeah? Well, maybe I'm safer on my own than with whoever's running this freak show. Ryan pushed past me, his footsteps echoing as he strode down the center aisle. Ryan, wait! I called after him, but he was already shoving through the double doors, disappearing into the darkness beyond. Olivia touched my arm. Let him go. He needs to cool off. I turned to her, upset and worried. This is exactly what's been happening all night. People walking off alone and vanishing. She looked down, her shoulders dropping. There's something I need to tell you. About Emma. I rested against a pew, waiting. The colored moonlight coming through the stained glass put blue and red spots on Olivia's face, making it hard to see what she was thinking. When Emma and I came here before, she began, we found a section of the hospital that looked different from the rest. Newer. It had isolation rooms, small padded cells for violent patients. She crossed her arms tightly across her chest. Emma was drawn to one specific room. Said she could hear someone calling to her from inside. And I let her go in alone. I waited in the hallway, but something felt off about the place. The air was colder, and I kept hearing whispers even though we were alone in the building. Olivia took a deep breath. Emma was only in there for about 10 minutes, but when she came out, she was different. Different how? I pressed. Her eyes looked empty. She moved stiffly like she was sleepwalking, and she kept saying, "They're still here," over and over. Olivia met my gaze. She snapped out of it after we left the building, claimed not to remember anything that happened in that room. I thought she was just messing with me. Until now, I finished for her. She nodded. Until now. I thought about what she'd told me. If Emma had seen something supernatural during their last visit, it might explain her weird behavior tonight. Her focus on the building, her whispering to empty spaces. But it didn't explain how 4 people had disappeared or how someone had shot Thomas. We need to find Emma, I said finally. Whatever's happening, she seems to be at the center of it. I agree. Olivia pushed herself away from the altar. That isolation room might be a good place to start looking. We left the chapel and headed back into the main hospital, following Olivia's uncertain directions. The hallways continued their unsettling transformations, with doors appearing where none had been before and familiar landmarks changing position. After 20 minutes of increasingly confused navigation, we reached a junction where the corridor split in 3 directions. I don't remember this, Olivia admitted, looking between the three identical hallways. Which way to the isolation rooms? I asked. She pointed to the rightmost corridor. I think that way, but I'm not sure. I looked at our options. Look, this place is playing tricks on us. Let's check all three, but we can't risk getting separated. How about this? I'll go down the right corridor while you check the middle one. Just to the end and back, no more than 2 minutes. If we don't find anything, we both come right back to this spot and try the left one together. Olivia looked nervous, but nodded. Okay. 2 minutes, no longer. I'll time it, I promised, checking my watch. 11:45 now. Back here at 11:47. We separated, her flashlight beam bobbing down the middle corridor as I headed down the right one. The hallway was longer than I expected, with doors on both sides, patient rooms mostly, their contents long since stripped away. At the end, I found only a window overlooking the dark grounds of the hospital. No isolation rooms, no sign of Emma. I checked my watch. 11:47 exactly. Time to head back to Olivia. When I returned to the junction, Olivia wasn't there. I called her name, my voice bouncing back at me from the empty corridors. No response. 2 minutes, I muttered to myself. That was the deal. I checked my watch again. 11:48. Maybe her hallway had been longer than mine. Maybe she'd found something and was on her way back now. I waited another minute, growing increasingly worried. Olivia, I called again, louder this time. Nothing. I took the middle corridor, moving quickly and calling Olivia's name every few steps. Like mine, it ended in a blank wall with a single window. No side rooms, no Olivia. Back at the junction, I tried the left corridor, which turned sharply after about 20 feet. As I went around the bend, I found myself looking at a heavy metal door with a small, wire-reinforced window at eye level. A sign beside it read, "Restricted area, staff only." The door was slightly open, though it looked like it should have been locked. Through the opening, I could see another corridor lined with thick metal doors. Isolation rooms. "Olivia!" I called, pushing the door open wider. The air beyond felt noticeably colder, carrying a medicinal smell that the rest of the hospital lacked. I stepped through, my flashlight showing a plain hallway, unlike the others we'd explored. The floors were sealed concrete rather than tile, the walls bare cinder block painted a dull, institutional green. Most of the metal doors were shut tight, but the one at the far end stood open. A weak light blinked from within that room. Not the steady beam of a flashlight, but something more uneven, like a candle or a failing bulb. I walked up slowly, listening for any sound of Olivia or the others. "Olivia?" I called again, softer now, not wanting to alert anyone or anything else that might be in this section. I reached the open door and peered inside. The room was small, maybe 10 feet square, with padded walls stained by water damage and age. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, blinking erratically. In the center of the floor lay Olivia, face down, a dark pool spreading from beneath her head. Standing over her was Emma, her back to me, holding a length of rusted metal pipe in her right hand. The bottom end dripped steadily onto the concrete floor. "Emma?" My voice sounded strange to my own ears, barely a whisper. She turned slowly, mechanically, like she had to remember how her joints worked. Her face was blank, eyes unfocused, looking through me rather than at me. Blood had spattered across her cheek and forehead, stark against her pale skin. "The patients showed me what they did to the troublemakers," she said, her voice flat and emotionless. The voice didn't sound like Emma at all. It was deeper, with a hint of an accent I couldn't place. She took a step toward me, the pipe hanging loosely at her side. I backed away instinctively, my light showing Olivia's body more clearly. Her head was crushed on one side, hair matted with blood and darker matter. She was definitely dead. Emma took another step forward, leaving Olivia's body behind her. Her eyes looked empty, but her head tilted slightly as she looked at me. "Emma, put down the pipe," I said, continuing to back toward the hallway. "Whatever's happening, we can figure it out." She didn't seem to hear me. Her lips moved silently, like she was talking to someone I couldn't see. Then she suddenly looked right at me, so intensely I froze. "They won't let any of us leave," she said in that same emotionless voice. "Not until the hospital is cleansed." Emma took another step toward me, the rusted pipe hanging at her side, dripping Olivia's blood onto the concrete floor. Her movements were stiff, like a puppet being operated by someone who'd only vaguely understood how human bodies worked. "The patients need their vengeance," she said in that flat, unfamiliar voice. "You disturbed their rest. You all did." I backed into the hallway, trying to keep my voice steady. "Emma, this isn't you. Put the pipe down." Her head tilted to one side, eyes empty. "Emma isn't here anymore." She jumped forward suddenly, swinging the pipe right at my head. I moved back, the metal missing my face by inches. She stumbled forward, giving me a second to turn and run. I ran down the hallway, my flashlight bouncing all over the place. Behind me, Emma's footsteps followed at a steady, calm pace. Tap, tap, tap. Like she knew she didn't need to hurry. Like she knew I couldn't get away. I pushed through the heavy metal door at the end of the hallway, back into the main hospital. The twisting hallways that had confused us earlier now might save my life, if I could lose Emma in them. I ran past empty rooms and empty nurses' stations, taking random turns when hallways split. The hospital seemed bigger than before, with new hallways showing up where I was sure none had been. I was out of breath and sweating. The tap-tap-tap of Emma's footsteps stayed behind me, never speeding up, never slowing down, never getting farther away no matter how fast I ran. I turned a corner and found myself facing a dead end, a wall of cabinets blocking what should have been a passage. I spun around, ready to go back, when Emma showed up at the other end of the hallway. The weak light from my flashlight caught her face, blank, with blood drying on her pale skin. She raised the pipe and started walking toward me, each step slow and steady. I turned to the cabinets, looking for a way through or around. They were medical supply cabinets, some with doors hanging open to show empty shelves. I squeezed myself between two of them, pushing with my shoulder until one moved aside enough for me to get through. On the other side was another hallway, this one lined with rooms similar to the one where Olivia had died. Most of the doors were open, but one near the end was closed. A crash behind me told me Emma had made it through the cabinets. I ran toward the closed door, hoping it wasn't locked. The door opened easily, and I found an empty padded room with a small window high in the wall. I stepped inside, then had an idea. Instead of trying to hide, maybe I could trap her. I moved behind the door, pressing myself against the padded wall. I could hear Emma's footsteps getting louder as she came toward the open door. "I know you're in there," she called, her voice echoing down the hallway. "The patients can see you. They see everything in their hospital." I held my breath as a shadow fell across the doorway. Emma paused just outside, and for a moment I thought she'd seen through my plan. Then she stepped into the room, the pipe raised, looking toward the window. I jumped forward, slamming my full weight against the door. It swung shut with a heavy metallic clang, catching Emma by surprise. She turned quickly around, but I was already on the outside, pulling the door closed against her sudden resistance. "No!" she screamed, a sound that didn't match her previously calm demeanor. The door shuddered as she threw herself against it, but the old asylum had built these rooms to contain violent patients. The heavy metal barely moved under her assault. I looked around for something to block the door. Across the hall was another patient room with a broken chair lying on its side. I grabbed it and jammed it under the door handle, propping it against the floor. Emma's screams changed from anger to fear. "Don't leave me with them." Her voice sounded like her own again, the weird accent gone. "Please. They're going to hurt me. James, please." I moved away from the door, feeling sick with guilt and fear. Was that really Emma now? Had whatever controlled her let go? Or was it another trick? "Jamie, please," she sobbed, banging weakly on the door. "I don't know what happened. There's something in here with me." I couldn't risk opening that door. Olivia was dead. Thomas was shot and missing. Who knew what had happened to Michael, Natalie, and Ryan? "I'm sorry," I whispered, though I knew she couldn't hear me. "I'll send help." I turned and ran, following the exit signs that had seemed absent earlier in the night. The layout of the hospital continued to confuse me. Corridors ended in walls where doorways should have been. Stairwells led to floors that didn't connect with the ones below. As I went down toward the ground floor, I noticed changes in the building itself. The decay seemed less advanced. Some corridors had functioning overhead lights giving off a dim yellow glow. In one hallway, I passed a metal cart with medical supplies, alcohol swabs, syringes, pill bottles that looked new, not decades old. I rounded a corner and nearly tripped over a wheelchair. Unlike the rusted, broken chairs we'd seen earlier, this one looked clean and functional, as if someone had just left it there moments ago. This didn't make sense. Nothing about this night made sense. I finally reached the main entrance, shoving through the double doors into the cool night air. The sky above had lightened to a deep blue. Dawn was approaching. I'd lost all track of time inside Greystone, but apparently the entire night had passed. I staggered to my car, fumbling with the keys before collapsing into the driver's seat. My hands shook so badly I could barely dial 911 on my phone. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher's calm voice sounded bizarre after everything I'd experienced. "There's been a murder," I said, my own voice sounding strange to my ears. "Multiple murders at Greystone Psychiatric Hospital. Sir, are you injured? Are you in danger right now?" "No, I got away, but my friends are still inside. One of them is killing the others." "Stay where you are. Officers are on their way." I sat in my car watching the hospital as the sky grew lighter. From the outside, Greystone looked older and more run down than it had when we'd entered. Parts of the roof had collapsed and many windows were broken or boarded up. It was hard to believe anyone could be alive inside that crumbling building. Police cars arrived about 30 minutes later. Lights flashing but no sirens. 2 officers came to my car carefully, hands on their guns. I got out slowly, raising my hands to show I wasn't armed. "I'm James Mitchell. I called about the murders at the hospital." The older officer looked at my face. "You want to tell us what happened here?" I explained as clearly as I could. The urban exploration gone wrong, people disappearing, Thomas being shot, finding Olivia dead and Emma standing over her body. The officers looked at each other as I told them about trapping Emma in the padded room. "Show us," the younger officer said finally. I took them into Greystone, expecting any second to see the weird changes I'd experienced earlier. The moving hallways, the newer-looking equipment, but the hospital stayed completely run down as we walked through it, our flashlights showing only dust, trash, and graffiti. When we got to the hallway where I'd found the isolation rooms, I stopped, confused. The heavy metal door that had been at the restricted area was gone, replaced by a blank wall with peeling green paint. "It was right here," I insisted, running my hands over the wall. A metal door with a wire-reinforced window. "Sir, there's no door here," the older officer said, his tone growing impatient. "Then we need to go around. There must be another way to that section." We spent the next hour looking through the east wing, with me getting more and more frustrated as none of the hallways looked like I remembered. We never found the isolation rooms. We never found Emma or Olivia's body. We didn't even find the blood that had collected under Olivia's crushed skull. "Listen, son," the older officer said eventually. We've searched this building top to bottom. There's nobody here, no bodies, no blood, nothing. That's not possible, I insisted. I saw Olivia dead. I trapped Emma in that room. The younger officer sighed. Maybe you saw something, but there's no evidence of any crime here. They took me to the police station, not quite arresting me, but making it clear I didn't have a choice. They put me in an interview room by myself, where I repeated my story to a detective who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. We get calls about Greystone every couple of months, he told me after taking my statement. Teenagers, ghost hunters, urban explorers like you claiming they saw something spooky. It's a big waste of department resources. This wasn't spooky ghost stories, I said, frustrated. My friends are missing. Olivia is dead. Emma killed her. Then where are they? He asked reasonably. Where's the body? Where's the blood? Where's this Emma person? We've got officers at the hospital now doing a thorough search. They haven't found anything. I don't know what happened to the bodies, but I know what I saw. The detective leaned back in his chair. Here's what I think happened. You and your friends went exploring. You got separated in that big old building. You got scared, started imagining things in the dark. Maybe you fell asleep and had a nightmare. That's ridiculous, I protested. Is it? Because right now, the only thing we know for sure is that you filed a false police report. That's a crime, Mr. Mitchell. In the end, they let me go with a warning. No charges, but a clear message that they thought I was either a prankster or mentally unstable. I went home from the station around noon, tired and confused. My friends were missing, possibly dead, and no one believed me. The hospital I'd explored last night seemed like a different building entirely from the one I'd shown the police this morning. I drove to a small diner near my apartment and ordered coffee, then pulled out my laptop. If the police wouldn't help, I'd have to figure this out myself. I looked up information about Greystone's history, going deeper than the basic facts Ryan had shared before our exploration. Most sites repeated the same information about overcrowding and patient mistreatment, but one local history blog mentioned something I hadn't heard before. In 1974, a nurse named Margaret Wilkins had been arrested for killing 6 patients at Greystone. According to court records, she had smothered them with pillows during her night shifts over a period of 2 months. When arrested, she claimed voices in the hospital had told her to do it. Voices of former patients who wanted to clean the hospital of troublemakers. The article included a grainy black and white photo of Nurse Wilkins being taken into court. She was a tall, thin woman with dark hair pulled back tightly from her face. Her expression was blank, her eyes empty. I clicked through more photos from the article, stopping when I reached the last one, a staff photo from Greystone taken in 1973, showing Nurse Wilkins standing in a group of hospital employees. Around her neck hung a silver locket identical to the one Emma had worn. I looked at the screen, the coffee getting cold beside me, as I started connecting the dots. Emma's weird behavior, her obsession with the hospital after their first visit, the voice that didn't sound like her when she attacked me, the locket. It had to be connected somehow, but that still didn't explain how Olivia's body had disappeared, or why the hospital's layout had completely changed between night and morning. I rubbed my eyes, which were super tired after the sleepless night. None of this made sense, but one thing was clear. I couldn't just walk away. My friends had disappeared in that hospital, and Emma was still in there acting really weird. I paid for my coffee and headed back to my apartment. I needed sleep before I could think clearly. But as tired as I was, I knew I'd be going back to Greystone, with or without police help. I had to find proof that what I'd experienced was real. I woke with a start on my couch, laptop still open beside me. The browser showed the black and white photo of Nurse Wilkins with her silver locket, identical to Emma's. My apartment was really quiet after all the chaos at Greystone. The clock on my wall read 2:17 p.m. I'd slept less than 2 hours. My body ached from exhaustion, but I couldn't stop thinking about all the connections. The police thought I was crazy or lying. They'd walked me through the same hospital hallways where I'd seen horror unfold, yet everything looked different to them. No isolation ward, no blood, no Emma. I splashed cold water on my face and changed into clean clothes. I had to go back. If Emma was still trapped in that isolation room, I couldn't leave her there, possessed or not. And if Olivia's body was still where I'd seen it fall, that would prove I wasn't imagining things. The drive to Greystone took 20 minutes. I parked in the same spot as the night before, but didn't bother hiding my car this time. The hospital looked smaller in daylight, less scary. Broken windows caught the afternoon sun, and birds had made homes in gaps in the roof. It seemed impossible that anything supernatural could exist in such an ordinary-looking ruin. I grabbed my flashlight, a bottle of water, and my phone with its battery now fully charged. At the entrance, yellow police tape hung loosely across the doors, evidence of this morning's search. I ducked under it and stepped inside. The main lobby looked exactly as I remembered from our initial entry, not as it had looked during the police search. The reception desk stood to my left, covered in debris. Abandoned wheelchairs sat exactly where we'd first seen them. My skin felt weird. The building looked as it had when our group first entered, not as it had appeared just hours ago with the police. I walked toward the east wing. Every hallway, every corner matched my memory from the night before. I passed the day room with its faded checkerboard table. I walked up the stairwell where ceiling sections had collapsed. Everything was where it should be. On the third floor, I found the electroshock therapy room with its equipment intact. The gurney with leather restraints, the cabinet of glass bottles, the rusty headpiece Emma had held. Nothing had been moved. I continued along our path from the previous night, following the route we'd taken after hearing the banging sound. I passed through the twisting hallways that had confused us during our search for the others. At the corner where I'd last seen Ryan before he stormed off, I stopped. To my right stood the heavy metal door marked Restricted Area, Staff Only, the door that had mysteriously vanished during the police search. I pushed it open, revealing the isolation ward beyond. The air was colder here, with that same medicinal smell. My flashlight beam showed the concrete floor and green cinder block walls. At the end of the hallway, the door to the padded room where Olivia had died stood closed. I walked slowly toward it, listening for any sound. When I pushed the door open, the room looked empty at first glance. No body, no Emma with her pipe. But as I moved my flashlight across the concrete floor, I saw it. A dark stain where Olivia had fallen. Blood that had soaked into the concrete. The police had missed it because they'd never found this section of the hospital. I knelt beside the stain, touching it with my fingertips. The blood had dried completely. Near the edge of the stain lay a small silver object. I picked it up, a hoop earring, one I'd seen Olivia wearing the night before. Proof she had been here, proof she had died here. I stood and continued down the hallway to the room where I'd trapped Emma. The broken chair still braced the door handle exactly as I'd left it. I called her name softly, pressing my ear to the cold metal. A quiet murmuring came from inside, too faint to make out words. I removed the chair and eased the door open, ready to jump back if Emma came at me with the pipe. But the attack never came. Emma sat huddled in the corner of the padded room, knees drawn up to her chest, rocking slightly back and forth. Her clothes and face were stained with dried blood. Olivia's blood. The rusted pipe lay discarded on the floor several feet away from her. Her eyes flicked up to me, recognition dawning slowly. James? Her voice sounded like her own again, young, frightened. Nothing like the cold tone she'd used when attacking me. Emma. Is it really you?" I kept my distance, watching her carefully. She nodded, tears cutting clean tracks through the blood on her cheeks. They let me go. When the sun came up, they let me go. "Who let you go?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "The patients." She clutched her silver locket, then yanked it from her neck, breaking the chain. "They live in here. I can hear them talking, all the time, talking." She threw the locket across the room where it hit the padded wall with a soft thud. I remained by the door. "Emma, do you remember what happened last night? Do you remember Olivia?" Her face crumpled. "I killed her. I killed all of them. But it wasn't me, James. You have to believe me. They made me do it. They pushed me out and took over." She buried her face in her hands. I could see everything, but I couldn't stop myself. I was stuck watching from inside my own head. "Tell me what happened," I said, sitting down against the wall opposite her. "Start from the beginning." Emma took a deep breath. "I found this locket when Liv and I came here the first time. It was in one of the patient rooms, stuck between the wall and a radiator. I thought it was pretty." She laughed bitterly. I didn't know it was hers. "Nurse Wilkins," I said. Emma looked up sharply. "How did you know?" "I saw her picture. She wore the same locket." Emma nodded. "She killed patients here. But that's not the whole story. Before she started working here, she was a patient. The doctors did things to her. Experimental treatments, the kind they didn't put in official records. When they decided she was cured, they hired her as staff. But she wasn't cured. She just learned to hide it better." I didn't ask how Emma knew this. I was starting to understand. "When I put on the locket, I could hear them," she continued. "All the patients who died here. The ones who were mistreated. The ones who were forgotten. They're still here, trapped in the hospital." She looked around wildly. "The building keeps them. It changes to confuse people, to trap them inside so the patients can have their revenge." "What about the others?" I asked. "Thomas, Natalie, Michael, Ryan. What happened to them?" Emma's eyes glazed over, as if looking at something I couldn't see. "Thomas wasn't really shot. That was just to separate him from the others. They took him to the basement, to the old hydrotherapy rooms. He drowned." Her voice remained flat, emotionless. "Natalie got lost in the walls. There are passages that weren't on any blueprint, places where troublesome patients were taken. She's still there." I felt cold. "And Michael? Ryan?" "Michael followed what he thought was Natalie, but it wasn't her. It was never her. They led him to the roof, and..." She made a pushing motion with her hands. "Ryan tried to leave after he left you in the chapel. The hospital wouldn't let him find the exit. He's in the morgue now." I pulled out my phone, checking that I had signal. "Emma, I'm going to call the police. We need to get you out of here." She didn't protest as I dialed 911 and explained where we were. The dispatcher told me officers would arrive shortly. I gave directions on how to find the isolation ward, then ended the call. "They won't find the bodies," Emma said quietly. "The hospital hides them. It only shows you what it wants you to see." "But they'll find you," I said. "And the blood. That's enough to start with." We sat in silence until voices carried down the corridor, police officers following my directions. When they showed up in the doorway, their shocked expressions told me they were seeing exactly what I saw. Emma covered in blood, huddled in a padded cell in a section of the hospital they'd claimed didn't exist that morning. One officer helped Emma to her feet, while another took pictures of the room and the bloodstain in the corridor. I showed them Olivia's earring and explained everything that had happened. This time, they listened. The next few weeks went by in a blur of police interviews, searches, and mental health evaluations. They never found the bodies, just as Emma had said, but they found blood evidence matching Olivia's type in the isolation room and traces of Thomas's blood in the administration office where Ryan had claimed he was shot. Emma went through lots of psychological testing. She talked about patient treatments from the 1950s and 60s in great detail, procedures that matched hospital records that had never been made public. She remembered patient names and histories that checked against old documents. The psychiatrists diagnosed her with dissociative identity disorder, saying she had created alternate personalities based on former hospital staff and patients. I testified at Emma's hearing, explaining what I'd seen that night at Greystone. I described how she had changed, her voice, the way she acted, everything about her becoming someone else entirely. The court seemed more willing to accept psychiatric explanations than supernatural ones, and in the end, Emma was sent to a secure psychiatric facility rather than prison. The disappearances of Thomas, Michael, Natalie, Ryan, and Olivia remained officially unsolved. The police theory suggested they had died in various accidents while exploring the dangerous abandoned building, and that wildlife had removed the bodies. It was easier for everyone to believe that than to consider alternatives. I visited Emma one last time before leaving the state. The psychiatric facility kept her sedated and monitored. She recognized me but seemed distant. Her eyes kept looking to empty corners of the room as if listening to voices I couldn't hear. "They followed me here," she whispered when the nurse stepped out. "The hospital let them come with me. They're waiting." "Who's waiting?" I asked, though I knew the answer. "The patients." She leaned close, her voice dropping even lower. "And Liv and the others. They're patients now too." She tapped her temple. "They talk to me all the time." I left that day and never went back. I moved 300 miles away and gave up urban exploration entirely. But sometimes at night, I wake up thinking I hear banging sounds in my walls, or whispers that I can almost but not quite understand. And I wonder if Emma was right, if the hospital let something follow me home too. The official investigation into what happened at Greystone concluded with psychological explanations and theories about tragic accidents. The supernatural elements were dismissed, the changing layout of the building blamed on my own confusion and stress. But I know what I saw. I know what happened. And sometimes, when I pass old abandoned buildings with their broken windows and crumbling walls, I feel them watching me, waiting for me to step inside again.